Have you ever had that quiet moment when you pause, look around at your life, and feel like something inside you is changing? It's subtle at first. You can't always explain it. But suddenly, the things you used to tolerate, meaningless conversations, empty routines, the constant chase for approval, start to feel off. Like they no longer belong to the person you're becoming. And here's the truth, if you're starting to notice those shifts, then you're already on the path to wealth. Not just the kind measured in dollars or possessions, I'm talking about true wealth. The kind that begins in the mind. Because before wealth ever shows up in your life, it has to take root in your identity. In how you think. In what you believe is possible. You see, every fortune, every legacy, every life of purpose began as something no one could see, a single, quiet decision to change from within. That decision often comes without applause. No one throws a parade when you decide to rise early. No one claps when you choose discipline over distraction. But make no mistake, those small decisions are the exact soil where wealth is planted. Most people wait for a sign. But the truth is, the sign is already within you. It's that discomfort with mediocrity. That desire to grow. That hunger for more, not just more stuff, but more meaning, more purpose, more control over your own destiny. And the most powerful thing? You don't need permission to start. You don't need to be wealthy to think like the wealthy. You just need to become aware of the shift already happening inside you, the shift from reaction to intention, from doubt to clarity. So if you're feeling that pull today, don't ignore it. Lean into it. Because real wealth doesn't begin with a paycheck. It begins with a mindset. With the kind of man or woman you're choosing to become. One decision at a time. And that is where everything changes. Have you noticed lately that the things you used to tolerate suddenly feel unbearable? The small talk, the mindless scrolling, the paycheck to paycheck cycle, they don't sit right with you anymore. What used to be normal now feels empty. That quiet unease you're feeling? That's not frustration. That's transformation. You're not broken. You're waking up. You see, mediocrity has a way of dressing itself up as comfort. It whispers, just get through the week. Or everyone lives like this. But deep down, something in you is starting to reject that lie. You're no longer okay with just going through the motions, showing up to a job without purpose, spending money without meaning, surrounding yourself with people who drain your energy instead of fuel your growth. That discomfort is a signal. A powerful one. It's your mind and spirit saying, this no longer fits who I am. And when that shift begins, it's impossible to ignore. You start looking at your habits, your environment, even your beliefs, and you begin questioning all of it. Why am I doing this? Who am I becoming if I keep living this way? These aren't easy questions. But they are necessary. Because rejecting the ordinary is the first step toward building an extraordinary life. Every wealthy, impactful, purpose-driven person you admire has had this moment. The moment they stopped accepting average and started demanding more, not from the world, but from themselves. That's when real change begins. Not when you earn more, but when you expect more, from your time, your relationships, your choices. So if you're feeling that growing tension with your old life, embrace it. Don't run from it. Because that discomfort is not a curse. It's a compass. It's pointing you away from survival and towards significance. And that, my friend, is where your journey to true wealth begins, not in your wallet, but in your willingness to leave ordinary behind. Let me ask you something, how do you treat your time? Do you spend it? Or do you invest it? See, that question right there separates those who stay stuck from those who rise. Because the truth is, time is the most valuable currency the wealthy possess. And I don't just mean financially wealthy, I mean anyone who lives with freedom, clarity, and purpose. While most people trade their hours for entertainment or escape, those on the path to true wealth start thinking differently. They begin to protect their time like treasure. Not because they're antisocial, Not because they're arrogant, but because they've realized, every moment you waste is a brick you didn't lay in the foundation of your future. You'll notice this shift when you start saying no more often. No to unnecessary meetings. No to shallow conversations. No to scrolling that doesn't serve your growth. It's not about being rigid, it's about being in alignment. Because every no to distraction is a powerful yes to your destiny. We've been taught to value hustle. But we rarely talk about attention. Yet, the ability to control your attention is one of the greatest forms of power. Why? Because attention determines where your energy flows. And where your energy goes, your results follow. People who live intentionally don't chase every trend. They don't drown in notifications. They don't consume endlessly. Instead, they create ideas, solutions, systems, value. So here's a shift in thinking that will change everything. Stop measuring your day by how busy you were. Start measuring it by how many meaningful actions you took toward your vision. Imagine what your life could look like a year from now if you treated every hour like an investment. What could you build? Who could you become? If you're starting to feel that pull, to protect your time, to sharpen your focus, to trade consumption for creation, then don't ignore it. Because that's not just a habit shift. That's a mindset shift. And that mindset, my friend, is the foundation of real wealth. There comes a moment when your perspective on money changes. You stop asking, how much can I make this month? And start asking, what am I building for the next 5 years? That shift is everything. When you're truly walking the path to wealth, you stop chasing income like a hamster on a wheel. Instead, you start laying down infrastructure, systems, habits, skills, and character that don't just make you money. They sustain it, multiply it, and protect it. You begin to think in years, not days. You realize quick wins are often illusions. And that real wealth doesn't come from effort alone, it comes from leverage. Leverage of time. Leverage of relationships. Leverage of ideas that work even when you're not present. You also begin to look at money differently. Not as something to worship, but as something to respect. As a tool. A servant. Not your master. You understand that money simply amplifies what's already inside you. If you're disciplined, focused, and purpose-driven, money magnifies that. But if you're chaotic, emotional, and reactive, it will magnify that too. So ask yourself, are you building something that can grow without you constantly pushing? Are you stacking skills that make you more valuable 5 years from now? Not just today. The wealthy don't just earn, they engineer. They build systems that allow their effort to compound. They develop assets, not just financial, but personal. Assets like emotional intelligence, credibility, clarity, and consistency. It's the difference between someone who hustles endlessly and someone who builds quietly and lets their systems speak for them. So if you've started to feel less interested in short-term gains and more focused on long-term growth, that's a sign. A powerful one. It means you're shifting from survival to stewardship. From paycheck to paycheck thinking to legacy level building. Because at the end of the day, wealth isn't just about how much you make, it's about what continues working, growing, and serving long after you stop showing up. And that is infrastructure. There's a powerful shift that happens when you stop waiting for signs and start realizing you are the sign. Most people spend their lives waiting for motivation, for the right moment, for someone to show them the way. But here's the hard truth: poor minds wait, wealthy minds act. And the moment you understand that wealth begins with mindset, not money, your life changes forever. You no longer wait for opportunity. You build it. You don't just talk about goals, you execute. You don't ask, is this the right time? You ask, what can I build today that compounds tomorrow? And one of the clearest signals that you're becoming someone different, someone wealth is drawn to, is your obsession with growth. You start devouring books instead of gossip. You seek out mentors instead of distractions. You trade empty talk for meaningful action. And even when your efforts aren't perfect, you keep moving. Because momentum, not speed, is what builds greatness. Momentum is what turns potential into power. Each disciplined day you stack, each uncomfortable action you take, builds something inside you, something that can't be shaken. That's how unshakable character is formed. Not from flashy wins, but from quiet consistency. You begin to realize that you don't need to look successful to be on the path. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. Your transformation isn't about appearances, it's about identity. So if you're in a season right now where you're focused, learning, creating, showing up, even when no one's watching, then congratulations. You're no longer chasing signs. You are becoming one. Because the real measure of success isn't how loudly you speak, it's how deeply you live. And when your days are driven by discipline, your mind by clarity, and your spirit by growth, wealth doesn't have to be chased. It finds you. Let me ask you something, are you still waiting for results to feel confident? Or have you started carrying yourself like the person you're becoming, even before the world sees it? One of the clearest signs you're on the path to real wealth is this: you start walking in advance of your results. Your identity shifts first, and everything else follows. You begin to visualize success before it's visible. Not as wishful thinking, but as a daily discipline. You speak victory over your life. Not because everything's perfect, but because you know the power of your words. You guard your language, because you understand, words create reality. And suddenly, I hope turns into I will. Maybe one day becomes it's already mine, I'm just catching up to it. That inner shift is where everything changes. You don't need external proof anymore to act like someone who wins. You walk with purpose, with posture, with clarity, and people can feel it, even if they don't understand it yet. Think about it, the most successful people you know didn't wait until the world clapped for them to start showing up with confidence. They showed up when no one was watching. They prepared like the deal was already done. They planned like the future was guaranteed. And that's what drew opportunity to them in the first place. You start to live differently when you believe it's already happening, when your expectations rise. Not from ego, but from alignment with who you truly are. So if lately you've been speaking differently, holding your head higher, saying no to things that no longer match your vision, don't second guess it. That's not arrogance. That's inner certainty. The truth is, the world doesn't respond to doubt. It responds to direction. And when your words, your posture, and your energy say, "It's already mine," you become a magnet for the very things you once chased. The shift starts inside. Walk like it's already done, and watch how the world adjusts. Have you ever walked into a room and felt your standards rise? Like suddenly, mediocrity doesn't feel acceptable anymore, not because someone told you so, but because the energy in the room demands more from you. That's the power of environment. As you grow, one of the most important, and difficult, decisions you'll face is this: are you willing to leave comfort-driven communities to step into excellence-driven circles? Because here's the truth, if you're serious about building wealth, not just financially, but in character, purpose, and legacy, then your environment can't be accidental. It has to be intentional. The people you surround yourself with will either pull you toward your potential, or hold you hostage to your past. Growth is contagious, but so is comfort. And many people stay stuck not because they lack discipline, but because they're surrounded by people who reward them for staying small. So, what do wealthy, impactful people do differently? They choose their rooms wisely. They don't try to be the smartest in the room. They find rooms where smarter people are talking, rooms where standards are high, conversations are deep, and purpose is the baseline. Because they understand, proximity is power. Wealthy individuals aren't just chasing money. They're building systems, principles, energy, a way of being. They live by codes, not trends. And those codes are reinforced by their circles. When you're in the right room, Discipline is normal. Excellence is expected. Vision is spoken like a native language. So if you've felt yourself outgrowing certain conversations, if small talk feels exhausting, and shallow approval no longer excites you, that's a sign. A good one. You're evolving. And evolution often means letting go. Not because you're better, but because you're building something bigger. So ask yourself, are the people around me making it easier to stay the same, or harder to ignore my potential? Because when your environment demands excellence, excellence becomes your new normal. And from that place, real wealth is no longer just possible, it becomes inevitable. Let's be real, adversity doesn't feel like a gift when you're in it. Pressure, failure, setbacks, they test you in ways nothing else can. But here's what most people never realize, those trials aren't just obstacles. They're training grounds. Every successful person, every truly wealthy individual in spirit and in substance, has one thing in common: they learn to use adversity as fuel. Not a finish line where others fold under pressure. They rise. Because wealth, real, sustainable wealth, doesn't flow to the loudest voice or the flashiest success story. It flows to those who can be trusted. And trust isn't earned in comfort. It's forged in consistency. In quiet moments where no one is watching. And you choose to show up anyway. You see, resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about bouncing forward, stronger, wiser, more aligned. When you stop seeing failure as a stop sign and start seeing it as a signpost, everything changes. You begin extracting lessons from every loss. You stop resenting the hard times and start respecting them for what they really are, the sharpening process that prepares you for more. And let's talk about character. Because abundance doesn't land where there's no structure to hold it. Without character, success crumbles. Without integrity, wealth leaks. But when you build discipline, when you follow through, when you hold your word, even in private, that's when you become the kind of person who can carry wealth without being crushed by it. So if you're walking through difficulty right now, don't ask why me. Ask what is this making me into? Because every hardship is shaping your capacity. Every challenge is testing your alignment. Every trial is asking, can you be trusted with more? And when the answer is yes, not through words, but through how you live, wealth doesn't just visit. It stays. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. And if you keep showing up, keep refining, keep growing, then trust this, the breakthrough is already on its way. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough credit on the journey to wealth: discipline. Most people hear that word and think of restriction, punishment, or burnout. But the truth is, discipline is not punishment. It's privilege. It's not about limiting your life. It's about building the structure that allows your life to expand. When you're operating in survival mode, everything feels urgent. You wake up reacting. You make decisions from stress. You spend energy chasing the next break. But when you make the shift from survival to stewardship, something powerful happens. You stop living by default and start living by design. You begin to see your time as sacred. Your calendar stops being a list of obligations and starts becoming a blueprint for building legacy. You no longer just fill your day. You shape it. Strategically. You build systems, not just productivity hacks, but rituals that support your energy, protect your focus, and sustain your vision. You create environments that make excellence easier. You automate what drains you and prioritize what grows you. And here's the paradox most people never realize: true freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. When your life becomes more intentional, your cravings quiet down. You no longer chase shiny things. You begin to appreciate clarity over clutter, purpose over possession. That's what wealth truly is, the ability to live on your own terms. Not because you escaped work, but because you mastered it. Discipline is the gatekeeper of that life. It guards your time, your energy, and your potential. So if your mornings are becoming more structured, if your routines are becoming more intentional, If your space feels more focused than chaotic, don't dismiss that. That's not being uptight. That's being prepared, because you can't carry the weight of abundance if you're still thinking like someone just trying to get by. Wealth doesn't fall into disorder. It flows to structure, to stewardship, to systems built on purpose. And every time you choose discipline over distraction, you're not just making a choice, you're casting a vote for the future you're building. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. Real wealth doesn't come from doing more, it comes from going deeper. We live in a world that constantly pushes us to chase the next trend, jump on the next opportunity, or learn a dozen new skills at once. But here's what the truly wealthy understand: you don't need to master everything, you just need to master something. Focus isn't about doing less. It's about doing what matters, deeply, consistently, and with intention. Because the deeper you go, the more value you create. And value is what wealth responds to. Hard work. It's not something you try to escape. In fact, when you're aligned with purpose, hard work becomes sacred. You stop calling it a grind and start seeing it as a gateway, a process that forges your competence, your clarity, and your confidence. Think about this: when was the last time you were fully locked in on one thing, no distractions, no switching tabs, no second guessing? That level of focus is rare. And that's exactly why it's powerful. Because in a distracted world, depth becomes a superpower. Competence is currency now. Not busyness, not appearances, but skill, refined, rare, reliable skill. And the only way to get that? Simplicity. You don't build mastery by dabbling. You build it by committing, simplifying, and doing the reps over and over again, even when it's boring, even when it's hard. Wealthy people don't chase every shiny object. They pick their lane. They plant their flag. And then they build, layer by layer, year after year, until their work speaks so loud they don't have to. So if you're starting to feel the urge to simplify, to go deeper, not wider, to focus instead of scatter, follow that urge. That's not just a better work strategy, that's a wealth mindset. Because the man who goes deep is the man who becomes irreplaceable. And in a world full of noise, depth is what creates dominion. Here's a powerful truth most people never learn: emotions don't have to control your outcomes, but they will, if you let them. One of the clearest signs you're evolving into someone wealth is drawn to is this: you stop reacting, and you start responding. You begin to realize that emotional intelligence isn't soft. It's not weakness. It's strategy. When everyone else is triggered, impulsive, or driven by ego, you pause. You think. You move with purpose, not pressure. And that emotional maturity, it's what allows you to make long-term decisions in a short-term world. Wealthy minds don't just spend energy, they multiply it. They don't just clock hours, they multiply their time through systems and leverage. They don't just learn, they multiply skills through action. They think, how can this decision serve me in 5 years? Not just today. Because they know something average minds don't: every habit you repeat is either compounding for you, or against you. Your choices, the food you eat, the words you speak, the people you surround yourself with, how you spend your evenings, they're not just daily decisions. They're investments. And they will either grow into assets, or pile up as liabilities. And here's the key: wealth isn't just about how much you can gain. It's about how much of your energy, focus, and discipline you can multiply. The man who multiplies his habits multiplies his results. And the man who masters his emotions, he multiplies his future. So if you're starting to regulate your emotions, not suppressing them, but directing them, you're on the right path. If you're choosing clarity over chaos, structure over mood, mission over reaction, then you're no longer moving like the crowd. You're moving like a leader. Because wealth doesn't follow emotion. It follows strategy. And strategy starts with inner strength. So the next time you're tempted to react, ask yourself this: is this moment shaping my future? or sabotaging it? The answer to that question could change everything. Here's a mindset shift that most people miss. Freedom doesn't come from avoiding responsibility, it comes from owning it. When you begin taking full responsibility for your energy, your time, your money, and your habits, that's when real power shows up. Not flashy, not loud, but strong, steady, and deeply freeing. You start tracking things that matter. Not to obsess, but to align. You check your habits, your calendar, your finances, your emotions, because you understand that if you don't manage them, they will manage you. And when your life is ruled by impulse instead of intention, you can't build anything that lasts. But when you begin to live measured, something incredible happens. Your vision becomes stronger than your feelings. You don't let mood drive your mission anymore. You make decisions based on who you're becoming, not how you happen to feel today. That's not cold. That's clarity. It's the difference between saying, "I'll try," and saying, "I'm building." Between hoping something changes, and tracking what you're doing to change it. And the more responsibility you take, the more momentum you create. It's like compound interest, but for discipline. And let's talk about the voice in your head. Because once you take responsibility, your self-talk shifts too. You stop tearing yourself down and start building yourself up. You stop waiting for motivation to strike and start moving, even when it's hard. Even when it's quiet. Why? Because you've developed the one thing every builder needs, self-leadership. You don't wait for someone to push you. You don't need reminders to show up. You show up because you said you would, and that's what separates those who dream from those who deliver. So if you're tracking your growth, checking your habits, refining your choices, don't think of it as pressure. That's freedom. Because the man who takes responsibility for his life is the only one who can truly shape it. And that kind of power, that's the foundation of lasting wealth. As you grow, you begin to notice things that others overlook. You feel when something's off, even if it looks right on paper. You sense when someone's words and energy don't match. You walk into a room and know instantly, this isn't where I'm meant to be. That's not paranoia. That's discernment. When you're on the path to real wealth, not just money, but wholeness, purpose, and peace, your awareness sharpens. You become sensitive to alignment, sensitive to energy, sensitive to anything that might pull you out of integrity. And that sensitivity? It's not a weakness. It's a weapon. It protects your time, your focus, your future. Because when you're building something meaningful, you don't have time to be everywhere, with everyone. You learn to filter fast, not to judge, but to preserve your energy for what truly matters. You also start to realize that adaptability and humility aren't just nice traits, they're non-negotiable tools. The path to wealth isn't straight. It's not quick. And it's definitely not crowded. It requires the humility to say, I don't know yet. The adaptability to shift when new information arrives. And the wisdom to ask better questions instead of forcing old answers. This journey isn't for everyone. It's not for the comfortable. It's for the committed. For the man or woman willing to stay when others quit. For the one who keeps showing up, even when there's no applause. For the one who quietly sharpens their craft, builds their character, and refines their circle, day after day. So if you've noticed your intuition growing, if you're more selective with your time, more aware of your patterns, more tuned into what feels right and what doesn't, that's not a coincidence. That's confirmation. You're walking a sacred path now. And no, it's not always glamorous. But it is deeply powerful. Because wealth doesn't go to the distracted, it flows to those who are clear, calm, and committed. And that level of clarity? It starts with awareness. There's a moment in every journey where the chase for more changes. Not more stuff, not more status, but more of who you're meant to become. That's when you know you're stepping into real wealth, when the focus shifts from accumulation to transformation. When you stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, who am I becoming in the process? You begin to realize that money, titles, recognition, they're all surface level. But your mindset, your discipline, your character, that's the real treasure. That's what lasts when the applause fades and the noise dies down. And in that process, something surprising happens. You start craving solitude. Not loneliness, solitude. The kind of silence where you can finally hear your own voice again. Where the vision gets clearer. Where you're no longer influenced by what others think you should be doing. And you start aligning with what you know you were born to do. Because purpose doesn't live in noise. It's built quietly, in moments no one sees. And the deeper you go into that space, the more you realize, you don't need to be seen to be significant. You just need to stay consistent. You show up when it's hard. You hold yourself accountable when no one's watching. You lead yourself first, and that's the mark of someone truly aligned. See, anyone can perform when things are easy. But when you stay steady in silence, when you keep building in the dark, that's when you become unstoppable. Because the man who doesn't need applause is free. The man who's no longer chasing approval is dangerous. He's focused. He's grounded. He's committed to becoming, not just having. So if you find yourself caring less about what others think, spending more time refining your habits, and leaning into purpose, not performance, that's the real sign of growth. You're no longer driven by ego. You're led by mission. And that kind of alignment? That's the soil where true wealth grows, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. One of the greatest shifts you'll ever make is this: you stop making decisions based on comfort, and start making them based on legacy. You begin to look at your habits differently. You realize they're not just shaping your mornings, they're shaping your future. Every action you take is either a seed or a setback. Either it's pulling you toward the person you want to become, or it's dragging you back into who you used to be. And the difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck, it's not luck. It's not talent. It's structure. See, wealthy individuals don't leave their future to chance. They build systems that support their vision. They make routines non-negotiable. They measure what matters. They structure their day so that their purpose isn't something they hope for, it's something they live. Day in and day out. And it all starts in the mind. The man who can command his thoughts. Who can stay centered when others panic. Who can focus when the world is distracted, that man shapes his own reality. Because wealth doesn't come to the frantic. It comes to the focused. You don't need to chase money when your life is built around value. When you become reliable. When your work is consistent. When your energy is aligned, you start attracting what you used to chase. Ask yourself, what kind of structure am I building around my future? Do my habits reflect my goals? Or just my moods? If you want a legacy, not just results, you need more than ambition. You need alignment. You need repeatable action. You need structure. Because vision without structure is a wish. But vision with structure? That's a legacy. So don't just dream about the future. Engineer it. Live like the man who's already there, the one who doesn't just wish for wealth, but attracts it through consistency, clarity, and purpose. And in doing that, you're not just building success. You're building something that lasts. There's a moment, and maybe you've felt it, when something inside you just clicks. You stop saying I'm trying, and you start saying, this is who I am now. That moment is quiet. No confetti. No spotlight. But it's powerful. Because real success doesn't begin with strategy. It begins with identity. Before wealth ever shows up in your life, it takes root in your mindset. It starts when you stop chasing a better version of yourself and start embodying it. You move with a different energy. You don't need external validation to feel confident. You've decided. You've committed. You've drawn a line in the sand, not because everything is perfect, but because you know who you're becoming. And when that happens, your language changes. Someday becomes today. I hope becomes it's done. You start to speak from a place of authority, not arrogance, but alignment. That's when the world starts to respond differently. Because here's the secret, life doesn't respond to neediness, it responds to certainty. When you begin to operate as if the vision is already real, you attract the resources, relationships, and opportunities that match that energy. You stop asking small questions like "Can I do this?" and start asking powerful ones like "What would the future version of me decide right now?" That single shift pulls you out of emotional decisions and into intentional action. And here's something most people overlook: true wealth isn't just about money. It's about self-respect. It's about keeping your promises to yourself when no one's watching. It's about walking with quiet accountability, doing the work in silence, without needing applause. Because once your identity is in place, success becomes inevitable. Not easy, not instant, but certain. So if you're done trying, if you're ready to step fully into who you're meant to be, then say it with conviction: I'm already becoming. And when that mindset takes root, wealth has no choice but to follow. There comes a point in the journey where you no longer wonder if you're on the right path. You feel it. It's in your routines. It's in your standards. It's in the way you walk, talk, think, and build. And that's when you realize, you are no longer chasing wealth. You've become the system that attracts it. You've put in the quiet work. You've traded distraction for discipline. You've replaced guesswork with structure. And now, every piece of your life, your schedule, your mindset, your decisions, speaks one clear message: I'm building something that lasts. You're not relying on motivation anymore. You've built habits that carry you when inspiration fades. You don't need to hype yourself up, your clarity does that for you. And here's the truth: most people never reach this stage. Because it's not glamorous. It's not loud. It's forged in private. In the mornings where you rise early and no one sees it. In the nights you stay focused while others scroll. But you kept going. You stayed the course. And now, that consistency has turned into confirmation. You've stopped looking for shortcuts because you know there are none. You've stopped asking for signs. Because now, you are the sign. You're not being shaped by life anymore, you're shaping it. Every decision is intentional. Every moment is invested. You've gone from reacting to designing. From chasing to creating. From trying to becoming. You don't need to prove yourself to the world. Your results, internal and external, speak for you. You are no longer just participating in life. You are leading it. Legacy isn't a concept anymore, it's in motion. And the reason it's working isn't luck. It's alignment. You've aligned your identity with your actions. Your vision with your habits. And that alignment is what makes you unstoppable. So if you've been wondering when things will shift, take a breath and look around. It's already happening. You are no longer hoping for wealth. You've become the kind of person wealth was always meant to serve.